All right, guys. Hello and welcome to the Guest Life Podcast, episode 56. This one's special, as they all are, but I'm a little bit biased. We have David Guest in the house. Yes, you heard it right. David Guest, I've known him 32 years now.
That's it.
We happen to be cousins and best buds growing up since day one. So super happy to have you, Dave.
Thank you, Dan. It's one that I've wanted to be on for a while. So it's an honor to be here. And like I was just saying to you, it's funny because you're my cousin. My sister works here, and yet this is the first time I've been to your office because it's he's always there. I'll go at some point.
Yeah.
But then finally, it brings me into the office. Also for that purpose too, just to see the office and to be on the show today. So thank you.
That's it, guys. So again, known Dave my whole life, childhood mini stick buddies and amongst other things. But before we get started, guys, just want to thank everybody for tuning into the show. Again, we couldn't do this without our listeners and people getting interested and active and getting feedback. So please like, share, and follow. We're going to get all Dave's, socials on there afterwards. And today we're going to talk fitness, we're going to talk personal development, and we're going to talk a little bit about perseverance and mindset, really, with Dave. And, going through, again, I know this is one of the strongest guys I've ever met. So we're going to get into it and learn a little bit more about him. So David's currently working for Echelon Insurance. On the side, He's a mentor and leader for Body, which is a health and wellness program that we're going to talk about, and talk about some of the challenges and struggles that he's faced over his career and his life, and how he's kicking butt as a father and a community leader, and just all around great guy. So, Dave, we've started changing the topic of the show. So, first one is, what was your first paid job?
First paid job was to wash cars in a parking lot for a car dealership. And that was in Caledonia.
Yeah.
And it was one where I was transitioning from grade school to high school. So it was like, I need some money. Like, let's do this. Like, how much will they pay me?
Yeah.
How clean can I get those cars, right? So that was my first job.
That's awesome. And so how'd you get it?
It was with Cyril's Chevrolet,
okay,
which is in Caledonia, and they're family friends of ours, and always have been.
Yeah.
So fortunately, it was just a phone call of like, we need someone to make sure our cars in the lot are clean.
Yeah.
And hopefully you can do a good job doing that, and it'll give you your first job. So that was the first one, which seems like a lifetime ago.
Yeah, and it's wild, eh? And is that cash? Is that on the books?
Oh, it was cash. It was cash, which was fantastic for a kid going into high school, and it continued like that for a little bit, which was very nice.
Yeah, that's great, man. I remember those days back in you were hustling, man. You were working outside of sports and everything else you had going on, like being able to pick up those shifts and put in that extra effort at such a young age kind of set you up for success later.
Yeah, absolutely. What I didn't know is that at the time, as my role changed at that car dealership and I went into other roles at the dealership, is, I almost grew up at the dealership in a sense, because, as such a little kid kind of going into high school, I was a very small guy, lacked confidence, just wanted to be social and fit in. And the mechanics there, they really took me in. And they were always like my role models. With some serious profanity, as you can imagine, with mechanics and being in a shop, but almost grew up at the shop in a sense. So it's one that is cool because it's very full circle when I go back there just to visit them. And I haven't in a while, but when you go back there and visit them and you see, think about where you were when you started as your first job, at least for me, when I started there as washing cars versus, now, and how I grew even while working for that dealership. So a lot of life lessons that can be translated to life, from your first job, right?
Man, I remember I was working at Pioneer gas station. I still go to the same gas station all the time, and, show up in my truck, and they see the brand, and some of the guys recognize me, but some of the new guys, it's kind of, I always ask them, where are you going next? What's the next step? And it's interesting to hear where they're going and what their thoughts of what they're capable of, and some of those limiting beliefs at an early age.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. So you started at a car wash on the side. Tell us a little bit about yourself now.
Well, it's a long story, but I went to school at Humber College for paralegal studies.
Okay.
I didn't really know in high school, like, you know how those conversations go with your guidance counselor, right? Like, what do you want to do with your life? And you're like, I'm in grade 10. Like, I have no idea how to answer this question. Like, what do you mean I have to know now? But all I knew is, like, one of my areas of strengths was in the law. And I was a very, like, average student, but for whatever reason, the subject of law I excelled in. So I'm like, okay, well, what can I do with that? And paralegal was one that stood out to me. So I went to Humber College, graduated there in about 2011.
Okay.
Got my paralegal license through the Law Society of Ontario. But I was only 19 when I got my license. So to me, it was like, okay, great, I've graduated, I have my license, but now technically I can act on behalf of clients in court. But I'm only 19 years old. Like, this doesn't feel right. I don't have the confidence to do that. So I eventually got a job at a law firm in Hamilton in 2013. And I started there as a law clerk, and it was a great job because it gave me the foundation of legal knowledge to then build that confidence in the legal field, and it gave me my start. And I worked there for about 3.5 years. And I was always corresponding with bodily injury adjusters because in the insurance industry, you have your law clerks, you have your lawyers. I would be the law clerk that would do all the work and pass it off to the lawyer for whatever step of the proceeding. And what I was doing was I was working predominantly with motor vehicle accidents for lawsuits for bodily injury. So people suing each other if they rear-end you or you rear-end them, and they're suing you for bodily injury because you hurt them. So that's where I would come in. And I always thought, I want to have more control over the decisions that are made on those files. And as a law clerk, you're very limited there. You do the work and you pass it off. So luckily an opportunity came up with Intact Insurance. So I joined Intact as a bodily injury adjuster in late 2016.
And did your paralegal like really help you get into that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with a lot of schooling though, it was a lot of theory based stuff. So I wouldn't say that you really need to have that, or maybe you have to go and have paralegal first in order to feel like you have that foundation, and then you go into the legal field. But there was eventually things that I learned in my paralegal program that I was able to take once I had a better understanding of the legal landscape. Mm-hmm. So it definitely was an asset. And I wouldn't change a thing because it was, the paralegal, the license, the understanding of wanting to start at a law firm, getting that knowledge and that experience, then going into an insurance company, working for an insurer, and then having more control over being a bodily injury adjuster, which was my role at Intact. And then really being the one that's driving the files in terms of how you want to negotiate, how you want to settle. It's very analytical. You have to assess the claims every day, and it was something that was a great fit for me.
Yeah.
From there, up until about late 2020, I think it was early 2021, I wanted to make a change. It just felt like it was a great organization, great people. It was just one for me that I needed to make a change at that particular time. I became a new dad in the later part of 2021.
Yeah.
So that changed things, changed my perspective. And my wife, Sam, who had 2 family losses within the span of like a couple months, on top of the postpartum journey, on top of being new parents. So it's just the perfect time to make a change.
Yeah.
And it was more so for myself, mentally and physically. I knew that it was time. So I actually went back to the law firm that gave me my start in my career, which was very cool, very full circle moment for me.
Yeah.
And worked there for about a year before joining who I'm with now, which is Echelon Insurance, a part of CAA. And my role now is a senior bodily injury adjuster, so handling a lot more complex motor vehicle accident lawsuit files to do with motorcycle accidents, fatalities, pedestrian accidents, those types of things. So very complex, but I absolutely love it.
Yeah. And you probably, and in terms of like going back to kind of the day to day, obviously being a new father, needing to probably be a little bit more consistent with your time. Mm-hmm. How does that correlate with the new position?
It's great. It's great because I'm working from home predominantly.
Perfect.
So that flexibility is very good. That I do have my set hours.
Yeah.
But there's flexibility there in terms of, if you need to go somewhere to do an appointment on your lunch break, or I'm the only one in my household that drives because my wife, Sam, has CP, as you know. So it's very important to me to be always close to home. And I always wanted to make sure that I had a job that predominantly I was working at home. So this one's allowing me to do that, to have a job that I love, but also be very flexible and be at home. So that Noah, my son, his daycare is around the corner.
Yeah.
If I have to take Sam somewhere, my wife somewhere, then I'm very accessible to her as well. So it's just a great fit all around.
That's amazing. And so tell us a little bit about how, you realized obviously you're a big sports guy growing up. Not that you've been getting beat up lately playing soccer. So I hear, breaking bones and stuff like that. But how'd you go from kind of the corporate world to becoming a mentor in the fitness space?
Yeah, that goes all the way back, I think, to birth, actually. Because I was born with golden heart syndrome.
Okay.
Which is incredibly rare. I think the statistics put it at about somewhere between 1 in every 3,500 to 1 in every 25,000 kids have golden heart, so it's very rare. And what it is it's a musculoskeletal syndrome. So it typically affects the ear, the jaw, different facial deformities, and most often a curvature of the spine or scoliosis. So in my case, I have no right ear. My right ear is a prosthesis.
I remember that as a kid when we were playing mini sticks, and I think what was the dog that chewed it the one time?
Oh yeah, one of the dogs chewed it.
Yeah, that was a classic. My dad would call me and tell me, "Oh yeah, Dave's ear's gone again," and fucking Uncle Brian's gonna lose it.
And I remember coming down the stairs with that, thinking like, I don't know what happened, but like it got chewed by the dog, I think.
Yeah.
And the doctor was like, just bring it in, we can fix anything. And I'll never forget his face when I showed him what was left. He's like, we can't fix that. That's gonna require a new one.
Yeah.
But yeah, so my right ear is a prosthesis. I was born without a right jawbone, so basically stopped just past my chin.
Okay.
So chewing food was a lot harder for me. It still is a little hard, but like I'm able to chew quote unquote normally. Like chew steak and all the hard foods just takes me a little bit longer. And my back, I did have a slight curvature in my back from birth, but it actually straightened as I grew, and especially as I exercised. So that's absolutely no problem as I got older, which is great. So I just feel very fortunate in my case, because although that gave me a lot of hurdles, and, I was forced to overcome a lot of obstacles and adversity. I'd be at the hospital for various appointments when I was a kid, right? And you're looking around the room, and there's others that have maybe the same syndrome or something else, and you just count your blessings, right? You're reminded of how fortunate and how lucky you are. So I always felt that way. But going back to your question, I always felt like a small guy because I couldn't chew food. I couldn't, maybe process food, as quickly as others.
Yeah.
I would spend so much time, like an hour eating my meal. So therefore, I wasn't able to consume certain amounts of food, and then I was always burning off whatever I ate. So I was always very skinny, like very light, very small statured.
Going into the corners with your brother, eh?
That's it. Getting beat up.
Yeah.
And my nutrition wasn't the greatest growing up either. So as I learned, what makes my body feel good, then I began to get so passionate about fitness and more so overall health and overall a healthy lifestyle. Because as you start to implement things into your day-to-day habits, and you realize, does this serve me well or does this not serve me well, right? And then, okay, so exercising serves me well. It serves me well physically. I feel strong, which is something I felt like I was lacking. I felt weak and scrawny, and I felt like I wanted to put on muscle. So exercising made me feel like I was getting stronger. Okay, so how is my eating? My eating was very poor. People that knew me in high school, I would have this same routine where I'd have a Barks root beer in the classroom and an Aero bar, and that would pretty much be my snack or maybe my lunch, which is terrible to think about now based on how healthy I eat now.
Yeah.
But it's important because I wish, I would have known at the time what serves the body the best, or at least a better understanding of nutrition.
Yeah.
Because you just kind of get trapped into we even do it now, right? I still do it, of a certain habit, and it's just your habit, but you don't stop to assess how is it making you feel. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Like, is this something that's healthy for your body?
Totally.
Whether it's something physical like food, or whether it's something you're consuming, like something you're listening to. Is this serving me well? So I wish I would have had that self-awareness to know Aero bars and Bart's root beer is not really going to serve you well. But as I started to exercise more, I started to eat right. I started to consume a big level of protein every day, a ton of vegetables every day. I started to feel so good, and I just thought, like, that's what I used to feel like every day, like putting that stuff into my body. Like, I can't believe it. So then I just really got passionate about, why, like, how I made that change, and maybe like why we kind of make the choices that we make every day. Mm-hmm. And I think that I still struggle with that and making certain choices in a day, maybe out of impulse, and then you're thinking, why did I do that? Right? And it just comes from maybe weakness in the moment or emotion. But as time went on, and now I feel today very strong. I feel very healthy, very full. I eat a ton of food every day, as you see from whatever we're eating together. But it's the right foods, right, which is important, because I think a lot of times people think they have to diet.
Yep.
And it is a diet, like it is technically a diet because you're being a little bit restrictive, but you actually might find you're going to eat more than you eat now. Mm-hmm. You're just not eating the right foods.
Yeah.
And what are those right foods to help you be your best self? So that's where that passion comes from. Like, how can you, Dan, feel like your best self every day? And that comes from, what are you consuming? What are you listening to? All that stuff. And once you figure that out, you think, it becomes easier, right? It becomes easier to say, no, I don't want to have that junk food today because it's not going to serve me well. It might taste great, and an hour from now, I'm going to regret it. So then that decision becomes easier.
Yeah, understanding the backstory of what's the purpose behind the action,
right?
Like, are you living with intention, and how that's going, and for anybody that knows Dave, and as you get to know him, if you follow his fitness page, it's like incredible to see his transformation, with obviously understanding some of the challenges. Like, I could just put whatever I want in my body, but getting big as a kid. But I forget what age it was, but when you started working out, you got huge out of nowhere in relative form, right? Like, how much weight did you put on, like, muscle wise?
Right. And I appreciate that, because I always feel like I still feel like a fairly small statured guy, but
yeah, right.
And people might probably look at me now like, you're still a small guy, but to me, like, how I felt back then and how I know I looked was like scrawny, maybe 100 pounds.
Yep.
Versus today, I'm only 133 pounds, but I feel strong as fuck.
Yeah, 100%.
I can lift heavy weights. Yeah. And it's one of those examples, right, that the scale doesn't tell you everything.
Yeah.
And I hope that people don't get bogged down by a certain number on the scale, whether it be they're trying to gain weight or they're trying to lose weight. It's one metric, but it is one of many, many metrics. It's how you're feeling. How do you feel about yourself when you look in the mirror? How do you feel about yourself mentally?
Yeah.
Do you feel healthy? Maybe your best self is a heavier weight, even though you're so fixated on getting your weight down. So, as I was at like 100 pounds, feeling very, very weak, not very strong, versus, now being at the 133, it's only a difference of like 33 pounds over so many years, but I look completely different and I feel completely different.
Yeah, shredded. You're shredded. Like, you see a Dave pump up video, it just makes you want to jump and go to the gym, fucking eat a salad and a steak instead of, there's no junk food at that house. But so how did you find Body, which was Beachbody before? I think a lot of the listeners will probably know what Beachbody was. Mm-hmm. Back in the day. What was the two people's names? Was it Diane and something? That were the Beachbody promoters?
Oh, like the promoters or like my mentors?
Yeah.
Well, my mentors were Jamie and Tim Fitzpatrick.
Okay.
And they actually live in Burlington. And I've been following them for a while. And we were using... formerly Beachbody Body Now, we were using them as a client. We were working out at home, the odd time. At the time I was more in love with going to the gym, just for the accessibility of the weights and the machines. Mm-hmm. But then as my career changed a little bit, and maybe the demands of the day to day, I didn't have enough time to go to the actual gym for as long as I wanted on a consistent basis every week, like 6 to 7 days a week.
Yeah.
So then it was like, okay, how can we, get these resources at home, but still feel like they're giving me the tools to be like as strong as I want to be without having the access to all those machines that are in the gym. So then I think it was actually the pandemic happened, right? Which seems like a lifetime ago, as you know, back in March 2020, where I was like, okay, well, here we are. Like, I'm already working at home. We already kind of slowly were starting to build our home gym. But now it was like, well, thank God I already have some of these things at home because now we can't go to the gym.
Yeah.
So then I really dove into Body more and started to use their programs. It's all virtual. So it's essentially like a Netflix of fitness. So
Okay.
how you go on Netflix and you want to pick a TV show, it just comes up on the screen. The same concept with the Body platform where you can just go on, pick a program, whether it's weightlifting or cardio or a hybrid, and you can just hit play. It plays for you. The trainer walks you through every exercise, and you do it. There's no, we don't need a personal trainer necessarily. There's no plan that you have to kind of think about. You don't need there's no mental energy wasted on, what am I going to do today? Well, what's my next move? Maybe I'll sit down and look at my phone. Maybe I'll do some curls. Like, that stuff just wastes time and you're not going to be intentional with your fitness, right? So I just loved it. I fell in love with it like right away because it was just like, how can we limit any mental energy spent on figuring out what we want to do with our workout, but also make sure that it's accessible, that we can do it at the gym if we want, but we can also do it at home or also while traveling.
Yeah.
Which is what the Body platform can give you. They give you those tools. So it became a hobby for me to at least be a coach, to open it up to even friends or people that knew me that wanted to get help with their programs, but also someone that would take the time to maybe show them how to do certain exercises that the trainers on the screen were showing them, but they maybe needed someone like me to maybe, film myself to show them a video of it.
Yeah.
And I really fell in love with it. And I spent a lot of time diving into being a coach to try to recruit new clients and bring in new people and new business. But what I actually found was it was bogging me down. And it was hard because I felt like it was really a direction that I wanted to go with my life. It felt like a lot of my passion was mostly with the fitness and health world. But I found that I wanted it to be more of like, I'm focusing on my own journey here, but I'm helping others that truly want the help.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I fell short, was trying to convince people to adapt certain habits. But then I learned, David, you can't force someone to work out. Like, you can open the door and you can help push them there, but they have to walk through the door. And if they're willing to do the work, then I'm always here for them, but I can't do it for them.
Yeah.
So, I learned that. So I've taken a little bit of a pause from that. And I'm always open to helping people that reach out. I say, like, I'll do whatever you want. Like, just tell me what, I should do or what you think. And I love working with those people. So I'm still open to that in the future. And I think I am going to probably get fully certified and maybe start my own business in the future. But for now, I'm just happy to focus on my own journey and then help those that reach out.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think that's a huge point that I don't find a lot of people talk about, which is having that barrier to entry with coaching. So, when you become a coach, and I've been able to kind of see that in a lot of different ways, but one of the things recently, and for anybody listening, have a barrier to entry. They've got to want it just as much as you want it for them. And I found I was giving way too much, right? I'm sure like you, I saw your posts and what you were doing for the community. Like, Dave would have given you the shirt off his back in the middle of the winter. It didn't matter. And so what I've done recently when people ask me for business support or business coaching is I get them to read a book that I admire. Say, read the book, come back to me once you've read it, we can talk. Mm-hmm. And it eliminates 90%, maybe 95% of the people that I would give all my energy to or give all my advice to because I want it for them more than they want it for them. Mm-hmm. And just kind of eliminates that. And now I've got somebody that's read a book, interested in the topic, willing to do the work.
Yeah.
Now I'm just like, you got the vehicle, I just got to put gas in it for you. No problem.
I love that. I love that. And it becomes hard because I think as a great mentor, it's okay to want something more than they might want it themselves, because it means you see a lot of potential in people, right?
Yeah.
Which I think is a great thing, because we all need someone like that in our lives that's going to say, I love you, but because I love you, I'm going to push you harder than anybody else.
Yeah.
And it might be uncomfortable and you might hate me, but I love you, and that's why I'm pushing you so hard.
Yeah.
And then if you can help someone, or at least be a driving force to help them get to a certain goal, it can be frustrating, right? Because you can almost sit there spending way too much energy on someone when they may not want to do the work themselves. But you're like, well, maybe it's just on me, right? Maybe I just need to do more to help them. It's like you can only do so much. They have to be the ones actually lifting the weights
100%.
and wanting to get there.
Yeah. That's what is it, Ronnie Coleman? Everybody wants to be fit, but nobody wants to lift these heavy weights. So going back into, I'd love to just because I know about the situation. So like, I'd love to talk about just how that fitness journey and your level of dedication helped Sam, and her journey with CP.
Yeah, I think it's funny because I think when we both started, at least when the pandemic started in 2020, I think we would say that I was definitely the one that would be motivating her all the time. Mm-hmm. Come on, let's work out. Like, I'm always so positive and full of energy, even in the morning, which she hates because she's not a morning person. I'm like, let's go. Like, we're up, let's go. And she's like, oh, leave me alone. Like, just stop. But I give her so much credit because she took it upon herself to then say, we have these resources and these tools, and we have a home gym now. How can this help me in my CP journey? Which, for those that don't know, it's cerebral palsy, and she would consider her case to be milder. But she, with her CP, how can she get to be her strongest self with the resources of exercising every day and also the mental fitness of it, maybe some meditation, some yoga, consumption of personal development books, and maybe certain traumas she might have in her past. Like, what resources can you consume to be your best self and to help you overcome the obstacles that she has with CP?
Yeah.
And also myself, because mental fitness is just as important as physical fitness, right?
Totally.
So with me being such a motivator for her, I think that was great. But she also did it all herself, where she wouldn't let things stop her. Whereas, for example, her feet don't move the same way that ours do. She's not able to fully put her foot kind of flat on the ground to have the same range of motion in her feet. So therefore, like, she walks with a bit of a limp, and then her balance can be sometimes an issue, right? Especially if there's uneven ground, uneven terrain. So when working out, right, if you're doing things like burpees or like jumping jacks or things like that, there's things that she might have to modify. But she wouldn't let it stop her, right? She would always find a way, like, I have to modify, that's okay, but I'm going to find a way. And even if I think this might be hard, I'm going to try it anyway, even if it's harder because I have CP. And she got to, like, I would say almost her strongest self, right before she became a mother. And then she was pregnant. And she was a badass. She continued to work out up until 9 months pregnant.
Come on.
A couple days before giving birth to our son, even with CP. And she's so thankful, and I was so proud because I think it did wonders for her recovery, and also wonders for the pregnancy, because if you keep moving your body, you just feel healthier. And your body adapts to whatever you're giving it every day, whether it's staying stagnant and sedentary, your body's going to react to that. Or if it's staying active, your body will react to that and adapts to that.
Totally.
So, as much as even now, sometimes we might make excuses for ourselves. Like, I feel a little bit like low of energy today. Like, I don't know if I'm feeling it. I'm going to work out anyway. And then you always feel better after.
Every time.
Versus, I don't really feel like I have it. Like, I'm going to give myself a rest. Then you wake up the next day and it becomes the same thing. Now you're starting a pattern. Because now you're like, well, why? I thought it was just a one-day thing. Like, why did I wake up and why do I feel like I have no energy? Well, because yesterday you took a day off because you thought you had no energy because maybe you just needed some rest. Now today you're going to decide to take some rest because you feel the same way. So now it's a habit. Just like exercising is a habit, your body will adapt to how good you feel and how full of energy you are because of that.
Totally.
And she did that. And she was able to completely recover, like, pretty quickly from giving birth. And
they,
then
they told her she would be in a bed for the last couple
they
of
did,
months.
yeah. It's a great memory. Like they actually said, like probably at 6 months you're going to be in a wheelchair or like completely bedridden because you have CP, and it's going to be so much strain on your legs, on your feet, on your knees. She was like, okay, but as much as she didn't believe it, like people tell you that, right? And she's like, I don't know, maybe they're right. But then she kept exercising, and sure enough, a couple days before giving birth, she was still exercising in some capacity. And then she actually gained a lot of weight, and she wouldn't mind me saying this. Like she gained a ton of weight through her pregnancy.
Yeah, of course.
I think it was like over 40 pounds.
Okay.
And then she slowly, day by day, just kept grinding and working out and exercising and never stopped. And then sure enough, now she's even stronger and even more fit than she was before she became a mother.
Unreal.
So, when people, come to her and say, "Oh, it's so easy for you. You're so thin, you're so small." She's like, fuck off, like bullshit. Like I have CP and I was told I would be better in the next 6 months and I gave birth to a child and now I'm my strongest self and you're telling me that like it's too hard for you.
Yeah.
So it's done wonders for her as well.
Yeah. No, I love sharing it. And it's a power story, to say the least. And I think, anybody listening that we all have, some mental hurdles, and it doesn't matter if they're physical or they're real or they're in your head, right? Like, everybody's issues are just as important, but hearing stories like that just get you motivated to do more and make it happen. Thank you so much for sharing, Dave. So how do you handle setbacks over the years? I know you've had a ton, whether it's the mini sticks or soccer or whatever. I think from what I can say and kind of gear the conversation, but like I think your setbacks are because you're pushing the envelope. What keeps you going?
Yeah, I don't know if it's always that because I'm pushing the envelope or if I'm just injury prone. And I want to provide some context to the mini sticks that you keep bringing up. Yeah. So I know one time we were in your basement on Thanksgiving, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if I was like 8 or 9 years old. And we were the same age. So I guess we we're both 8 or 9. And we were playing hockey down there. And then I think someone got it in their head to use a full-on stick in the basement with no room. And I took a slap shot, follow through right in the nose.
Yep.
And my nose was bleeding all over the place. But we both had parents that were like, "Yeah, you're all right. You'll be all right. It's just some blood, And I think my nose has never recovered because it's the most crooked nose I think I've ever seen, aside from Brad Marchand on the Boston Bruins. But
that's hilarious.
But yeah, no. Going back to your question. I wish I would have known when I was younger that when you get a setback, and I always did a good job pushing through adversity and overcoming obstacles, but I could have made it easier on myself with the mentality that no matter what your setback is, it's teaching you something. And you have to stop and assess, what is it teaching you? How did you get here? And sometimes it's out of your control, whether it be how, I injured myself this past May playing soccer. How did I get here? Well, I played soccer and I was running too fast, I guess. And I destroyed my knee. But, in life more so, how did I get here with, if you fail something, if you have a certain goal and you don't quite reach it, well, how did I get here? And what do I need to do differently? And once you figure that out, okay, well, what can I control? Because, we get down on ourselves, right? We fail something, we have an obstacle to overcome. Maybe there's a hardship coming our way and we don't know how to prepare for it. Just what can I control? What can I control today, tomorrow, next week, this month, to help me make it through or to see the other side or to get moving forward. Yeah. Right. And it's a great question because it brings me to a point I want to make is that I know you're familiar with the program 75 Hard, right?
Yeah.
So Sam and I actually did that a couple months ago now. We went on a cruise, just the two of us, at the end of August. We've been hemming and hawing about doing 75 Hard for a couple of years, actually. As a big Andy Frisella fans, you're a big Andy Frisella fan.
Yeah.
So we're like, this might be the hardest time to do it because we just indulge in drinks and food all week. But it'll be a great time because it's the hardest time. So it'll test us. So we embarked on that journey at the end of August, this past August.
On the cruise or after the cruise?
Right after.
Okay.
Right after. Like that Monday, I think we got back on the Sunday, we started the next day. Like, this is going to be hard AF, but we're going to do it.
Yeah.
So we're going to start. And we started, and as you know, it's basically like a checklist of things you have to do, right? You want to drink a gallon of water a day, take a progress picture every day, have 2 workouts that are 45 minutes in length. One of them must be outside. Read 10 pages of personal development every day. And I think that's the list. And you have to do that every day for 75 days. And if you don't do one of those things, even if it's the progress picture, you fail. And you go back to the beginning. So we did it, and some days were easier than others, and some days were a grind. And I am one that does not like walking, for example, and that was going to be our second 45-minute workout that was outside.
Yeah.
And I hated it. Absolutely hated it. Because I'm like, where are we going? Like, there's no destination. We're just walking in a circle for the sake of walking. I did grow to love it because I learned that the fresh air was very important. And it was something that you can do to kind of wind down from the day. Mm-hmm. So that was important. But I want to bring this back to your question is I failed. I didn't complete the tasks one of the days. I think I made it to day 33 and I failed, but I failed with, I would say, intention, because I did it for between day 23 and probably 33. I wanted to fail it every day. Like, I was done with it, because I felt that it actually wasn't serving me well, that having the all or nothing mentality really didn't serve me well, mm-hmm. that I was a guy that needed to be hard on myself. Like, what can I do better today? Like, you didn't do X, Y, Z. You should have done that. Okay, let's do that tomorrow. But also, like, let's look at the positives. Like, you did still win the day. You just maybe didn't do all the things that you wanted to do. And that's okay. But I was very hard on myself because, well, if I don't drink this gallon of water, even though I'm at 3/4 of a gallon, like, I'm failing the day. So, like, really, what have I accomplished today? But that, like, to me, that's bullshit. Because it's like, that's not how we should operate in life.
Yeah, I love that.
Is the all or nothing mentality. And some people, I think that that's important, that, having that checklist and going through that program is important. But for me, personally, it didn't serve me well at all, because I just felt like unless I hit them all, and Sam was the same way, unless we conquered each thing on that checklist, we failed. And that was an obstacle to overcome, going back to your question, because how do you feel like you're learning and you're growing when you're failing? And we actually felt like we learned a lot and we grew a lot through the failure, because we failed in a good way. At least I try to say that we failed in a good way, because we learned what serves us well and what doesn't. Mm-hmm. And we had the courage to fail intentionally. Whereas I was okay with that failure because I knew it wasn't serving me well. Mm-hmm. And I've done things in the past where, for example, there was one program on body that we did, and I wanted to do it with Sam to be supportive, right? It was pretty much using all resistance bands, no weights for them, or maybe a little bit of weights, but very low impacts, and all resistance bands, a lot of cardio. I'm like, oh, I'll do it. That'll be good for me. Mix it up, right? It was a 9-week program. By week 2, I was done with it. I'm like, I'm losing weight. I'm trying to gain weight. I'm losing my muscle. I'm sure, like, I'm getting more, like, definition in my midsection and my abs, but this is, like, far from the goals that I have for myself. But I'm like, no, like, I have to do it. Like, I set out to complete the program, so, like, I'm failing if I don't complete this. So fine, I'll just suffer and I'll go through the misery and I'll complete it. Mm-hmm. And I did. But what I learned was, like, dude, 2 weeks in, you knew you were 100% confident that wasn't serving you. So why did you continue? Yeah. And there's strength in failing, in my opinion, because if you know it's not serving you well, mm-hmm. then why is it a bad thing to change course? It's like that GPS analogy, right? And you probably have it in business all the time. Is you have a certain goal, you might have it in your mind of an exact route and a destination of how you're going to get to that destination, mm-hmm. but you just have to reroute along the way, and you're still moving forward. You're just changing course a little bit, and that's okay. You're not failing. You're just changing your direction.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, that's super powerful, and the ability to do that is that's great. I don't even have anything to add. That's just a very powerful point. And so we always ask this at the end of the podcast, but what advice would you give to your younger self? I know you kind of just answered that, but is there any other tidbit, any other nugget?
Yeah, for sure. I think you said maybe one thing, but I'll give 2. And I think you've probably heard this famous quote from Alex Hermosi. Yeah. That goes, you don't gain confidence by shouting affirmations in the mirror. Yeah. You gain it by having a stack of undeniable proof that you are who you say you are. So outwork your self-doubt. And it's so powerful and so profound, especially the last part, right? Outwork your self-doubt. Like no matter what, if you have a doubt, you just outwork it. And then you convince yourself, like, I have the confidence now because I've worked so hard that I feel like I'm going to accomplish this goal. And that takes me into something I wish I would have known when I was younger, and I would give advice to my younger self is, no matter what your intentions are, the grandest of intentions, the smallest of actions are far greater than the grandest of intentions. It doesn't matter what your intentions are, but if you're not taking any action to get there, it's bullshit. Like, you're not moving forward.
I love it.
So that would definitely be some big advice, and that's something that I'm still learning. But I wish I would have known when I was younger, or embodied every day. Is, I listened to all these motivational podcasts and playlists, or YouTube videos. It was because podcasts weren't a thing when we were younger.
Yeah.
But then it was like few actions to get to where my, to what my goals were, especially when it came to exercising.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, like I want to be fit like that. I want to be ripped. Like, I don't have the stature to be super jacked, but I just want to be, really lean, strong. But then my actions are, you're going to the gym twice a week, not 7 or 6, which is my goal, and you're eating like shit. So you keep saying your intention is to get really healthy and to get really fit and to eat well, but your actions are saying something completely different. So it's, what are your actions saying? It doesn't matter if you're not motivated that day, but if you take action toward your goal, you're farther than if you feel great that day, but you take no action.
Powerful. Yeah, I think Alex Hormozy says another thing about, like, let me see your calendar and I'll tell you if you're busy. That's a good one. Well, guys, if you didn't get anything from this podcast, just stop listening, because that's a waste of a day. But that was an awesome insight, Dave. And I'm getting to learn a little bit more about you today than I didn't know before. So that was great.
Nice.
Thank you so much. And so for everybody tuning in, again, thank you so much for listening. Dave will be able to share his body program, and if you guys want to know more, you can always reach out to Dave. All his socials will be there. Ty, that's working very hard in the back to make this podcast happen, he'll get you all that information. And Dave, thank you so much for being on the show.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Thank you for having me, Dan.